Hey guys, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Nick.
And for the first time ever, we're bringing you short-term rental
News with Nestrs.
So as you probably know if you've been following us, or if you don't know, Nick and I are Airbnb Superhosts. We have been for many, many years. So each week, we keep up to date with all the news that's happening with Airbnb so that we can stay educated on how it's going to affect our business, even if it's not happening in our own city or our own backyard. So we thought it'd be really cool to instead of keeping all this information that we gather week to week ourselves, we would share it with you guys. So coming up next, we're going to share new laws, regulations, who's suing who, as well as
some fun statistics that you'll find very interesting.
Yeah, so short-term rental news with Nestrs, here we go. All right, so let's start off with some drama. Airbnb sues Miami Beach over new rules requiring rental sites to police listings, which Airbnb is saying that violates the Federal Communication Decency Act. This federal law states that websites are not responsible for policing content on their websites. So an ordinance was passed last September, and it actually went into effect, I think, in December in Miami Beach. Properties that want to be listed on Airbnb must be registered with the city and pay a resort tax. If a listing is not registered on the platform, it can face up to fines of $1,000 for its first offense or $5,000 for repeated violations. However, if a platform agreed to use technology called geocoding or geofencing, yeah, that would block property owners from listing properties that are in short-term rental restricted areas. So in Miami Beach, there are some places where you can have listings and some places where you can't. They're asking for these platforms to put in this geocoding so that people couldn't even list it if they were in those areas. The Airbnb is saying, nah, we can't do that. It's against this law. So we'll see what happens.
In other news, San Francisco is looking for creative ways to retire their BART rail cars as they make way for their new fleet that's coming out by 2023. Now, there's a lot of hypotheticals here. They can be sold for reuse, recycling, reused as restaurants, housing.
One of the ways is short-term rental housing.
Short-term rental housing, which would be a really unique experience for guests.
Yeah, how cool that to stay in an old rail car.
I would pay more for that, I think.
And I think one of the other things that they're doing too is considering using it as shelter for the homeless, which would be awesome as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of other ways. For example, museum or art projects. They're also considering donating them to trade schools where a student will be learning about engineering.
Okay, so apparently I'm law regulation girl. A judge blocked an NYC law demanding Airbnb disclosures. So it's kind of the same thing that's going on in Miami. New York City wants short-term rental platforms like Airbnb to reveal what this judge is saying is breathtaking amounts of information about their business. A judge decided that request was unconstitutional. U.S. District Judge Paul A. Engelmayer said this decision wasn't even a close call. The law will not make its February 2nd debut. New York City wanted information that was not limited to the names of the hosts so that they could impose fines. New York City argues that illegal Airbnbs are causing New York City rents to rise.
The state of Michigan is having massive success with their Airbnb, bringing in $78 million in 2018. Now that gives the state back $4.2 million.
Because they're collecting tax.
Absolutely. And hosts are not having a problem with that because they're also reaping the benefits.
I believe, and if you know this, let us know in the comments below, but I believe Airbnb turned over that $4.2 million to the state, so I don't think hosts are responsible for that tax.
They're collecting it on behalf of the hosts.
Right.
Yep. Awesome, I love it. There are some counties that are performing especially well. For example, Wayne County, thanks to its conventions and concerts, Grand Traverse County, a tourist area, and Oakland County.
So if you're looking to invest in Michigan, those counties might be some places where you want to look into.
Absolutely.
Maybe. In Boston, regulations go into effect that affect short-term rentals. You must now register with the city of Boston if you plan on renting a room on platforms like Airbnb. And if you're an investor and you want to rent an entire space, it'll be illegal. Boston claims this ordinance will protect against illegal hotels that have been displacing Boston citizens from affordable housing options. Boston estimates that once this ordinance goes into effect, some 2,500 to 4,000 apartments will be back on the long-term rental market. However, Airbnb has filed a lawsuit against the city saying that parts of the ordinance violates city and federal laws. So for now, fines and data sharing are not going to happen. So it's kind of like, how will the city know if you are renting an entire space in Airbnb? Because the city would someone have to tell on you, or I don't know. So stay tuned.
So let's have some fun with the 6 Airbnb experiences that'll be all the rage of 2019.
They get weird, you guys.
Well, apparently in 2018, the biggest thing was goat yoga.
Goat yoga.
And you actually sit on a goat
I think.
and meditate.
I do know that what is trending in 2019, that is what you do.
So horse yoga. So the goats weren't big enough. We needed a larger animal. Horse yoga is actually growing 319% year over year. So, I mean, I'm just curious.
On our next
I'm
trip,
just
we
curious.
have to see if we can do this.
Yes, right? So meditation and hiking experience are huge right now. Great add-ons for any Airbnb stay.
Yeah, like forest therapy out of LA,
Yeah.
transcend with yoga in Rio de Janeiro, and then mountaintop yoga and meditation out of Iceland.
Nama tastings or wine and yoga are also trending, as well as pizza and pasta experiences. They can be found in Italy, New York City, and Japan. Apparently tie-dyeing is this year's...
It's back.
Yeah.
Who knew?
And people are loving this. It's one of the most sought after experiences is in locations like Portland, Oregon, Mexico City, and Bali.
Of course, Portland, Oregon. Hysterical.
Then history-based experiences are also at the top of the list. They're growing 2 to 3 times faster than food or drink experiences.
So let's plug our best friend, one of our guys that is in our mastermind group. He has a walking tour called Broadway Up Close. And actually, he's got big plans to really grow this year. So if you're in New York City and you like history, theater, New York City Times Square. Anyway, check him out. I think it's BroadwayUpClose.com. According to Business Report Online, travel trends look a bit different for 2019. So cities such as London, New York, Paris are still top business traveling destinations. The highest growth of trips belong to locations in regions such as Latin America and Africa. Travelers are also heading to places like Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, and South Africa. And group business travel is also on the rise. Groups are heading to Malaysia, Brazil, and the Philippines. And I think it's because the accessibility that Airbnb is offering to both hosts and travelers alike. While most Airbnb travelers book about 35 days or more in advance, business travelers tend to book a little more last minute at 20 days in advance. Airbnb travelers are also taking advantage of Airbnb Experiences, like Nick just talked about, which is another way for locals to make money on the platform. So you don't have to have a home to make money on the Airbnb platform. You could offer an experience. Travelers from the UK, USA, Australia, and Germany and Canada book the most experiences when traveling for business. So that wraps up this first episode of Short-Term Rental News with Nestrs. News sources for this update include Airbnb.com, the New York Times, San Francisco Examiner, the Boston Globe, CNBC, and even House Beautiful. So we'll be back next week with more Airbnb news.
Stay tuned.
All right, thanks guys.
Bye.